U.S. bullying, beginning of Jacob's trouble, and lots of other things happening as this, whole directive is falling apart. Shalom, first and foremost, like to give all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Dolan, his hails and apostles of Great Millstone, who are teaching this truth in sincerity, and shout out to Yakims out there in the four corners of the earth to proclaim this truth. Brakah the Yahweh, Brakah the Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakakadash, Brakatan. So after taking Venezuela, a domino effect, because now that he controls all the energy, because Venezuela was essential to all those countries, that they were dependent on Venezuela, not just for the oil, but for the energy. Well, DJ Trump, the king of Babylon, Nero 47, has found a way to use that to his advantage to where he can peacefully take over Cuba, as this video goes into, and what's going on there, because he's cut power, resources, water, everything from that country. Because he wants to take it over and make it a state, just like he'll do to lots of others.
Now let's discuss this live with Professor of Latin American Studies at the City University of New York, Daniel Shaw. Daniel, I'm glad to have you join me now. So you have just got back from visiting Cuba. What is the situation there at the moment? Can you share with us?
It's a reality, Mike, of deprivation and depopulation. That's the title of a new report that came out today from the Gray Zone. This is not just Donald Trump. This is decades and decades of U.S.-led economic warfare and sabotage against Cuba. And who are the ones to suffer? The 10.5 million people and shrinking. The Cuban population continues to shrink and shrink since 1991, since the beginning of the special period. And this is nothing but an extension of that special period, 36 years that the Cuban masses have not had any relief. Right now, it's blackouts, complete lack of any energy and fuel. A lack of food. Many families are panicked. And of course, it's the Cuban 99% are the ones that are suffering, because private companies, which are called MIPYMEs and shoppings in Cuba, they can keep importing fuel and food and whatever they need, but that doesn't reach the 99% of Cuba.
Now, with the energy blockade going on for months and talks between Washington and Havana reportedly ongoing, what do you think the end goal is for the United States?
The end goal is complete colonial control. The fifth column that Trump and Rubio speak for is the private sector. So within that energy blockade, Trump has been very specific that the private sector, the MIPYMEs, can continue to receive imports. The problem is that those MIPYMEs sell in foreign currency, in U.S. dollars, or the equivalent of those in pesos. And the 99% of Cuba only earn in pesos, and now retirees can't get their pension because of this energy blockade. Nurses can't receive their monthly salaries. Monthly salaries are backed up 3-4 months. So you have hyperinflation, and it's hyperinflation that's going to cause serious harm, and even I hate
and that's going to happen over here in Babylon,
because they can't access food. The only ones that can access food right now in Cuba are the ones that have dollars or euros, which is a minuscule part of the population, mostly Cuban Americans. So that's how they're recolonizing Cuba, through the private sector.
Now, Trump said he'll do something with Cuba very soon. Now, might this be Trump's usual bravado before the press corps, or do you think he has a regime change in mind? What would that entail?
Well, Mike, I'd love to hear the opinions of the Russians and the Germans and the world over the Chinese, the Iranians. Trump talks like he's a mafia boss. Trump talks like he's King Leopold from Belgium more than a century ago. For him to say he can do whatever he wants with Cuba, where's Cuba's sovereignty? Cuba has given so much to the world in terms of its medical solidarity, its internationalism, all the soldiers it sent for African liberation in Angola and in Guinea-Bissau. This is not the time for the world to turn its back on Cuba. There's flotillas leaving from the U.S., from Mexico, from Venezuela. We hope that everyone can participate in those flotillas and break this blockade, because the intentions of the business interests of the ruling class that Trump is the #1 mouthpiece for is to recolonize Cuba and to punish the 99% of Cuba for the revolution that they waged in 1959. And of course, these are the descendants of those who waged that revolution. But you never know with Trump. One day he's talking about he could do the same thing that he did to Venezuela and kidnap Cuban officials and try to frame them as drug addicts. The next day he says that he's in negotiations with the Cuban government. So he zigs and zags and really keeps all of the Cuban people, as they say, arrancándosela el cabello, pulling out their hair because of the stress that the Cuban people feel every day and the hunger.
Yep, the Hunger Games. And you don't think he's going to do that to Babylonian cities when he's already threatened? Hey, he's a fierce king and cruel lord. Cuba continues to suffer blackout. As Trump says, something will happen quickly. I'm just reiterating this. I already read it. Cuba also wants to make a deal, and I think we will pretty soon. Either make a deal or do whatever we have to do. And so we're talking to Cuba, but we're going to do what we're going to do to Iran before Cuba. President Trump ordered an attack against Venezuela in the beginning of the year that resulted in the capture of President Maduro under false charges. But nonetheless, though, Cuba has only received 2 field shipments this year. So just choking them out so that way he can make them bend to the will of Babylon, of America. So even the big states that voted for him are beginning to turn on him, as this is showing, because a lot of people, including Alex Jones, has turned against him, pretty much because, what has he done? He started World War III. He opened up Pandora's box that can never be closed. And now he's talking about boots on the ground indefinitely.
Let's take a listen to one more woman who we spoke with. If you could say something to President Trump, he was going to hear you right now, what would it be?
You're a worthless pile of
And you voted for him how many times?
3 times. That was my bad. Apparently, I'm an idiot.
Wow, so they really regret their decision to endorse him, right? But you never heard the end of it, right? How fucking great he is and everything else, though. I mean, there are some that still worship him till this day. Even though the Epstein files have come out, this is the Epstein administration, they still worship him no matter what. But a lot of people have turned, and we're going to still see it increase. So, of course, like everything else, though, Trump has doubled down, saying that he's going to take it by force because of the fact that nobody's going to help him with the Strait of Hormuz ambitions, and there's warships all over trying to get it back, as this snippet goes into.
We've got some warnings here for America and some updates as Iran continues an intense attack on all of its surrounding neighbors after Israel hits the country,
which are
and
U.S.
takes out
targets.
2 of its top officials. This Ali Larijani that you see here on the left, he was the one walking in the streets here recently, and we were saying, well, they're not going to be able to hit him in the street with all the people. So what did they end up doing? They hit him at his home late at night, and they also took out a general with the last name Soleimani. Those 2 taken out, and Iran just continuing here to promise major blowback, and they're hitting different areas. Now, the Straits of Hormuz turned into a weapon here, and they're saying that no one's going to be able to get through unless they're friendlies, and they're controlling everything through it. Trump is countering, saying that he's going to take the Straits of Hormuz by force. Some are warning that's going to be a bad move. We've even got an ex-NATO commander here giving a chilling warning to America, saying that Trump's made a fatal mistake here, and that him making these moves, killing all these individuals without actually having any kind of idea on what they're going to do, does not look good. And now it looks like Trump's getting caught with no plan, because he's turning around saying he no longer needs NATO's help because all the allies he called on did not show up. So they're saying that the threats to NATO here reveal a glaring absence of any strategy on Iran. And this is why many are saying he needs to offer him and get out ASAP. Trump then turning around saying, well, he doesn't see it ending this week. Someone asked him straight up. He says it won't be over this week. It could take several weeks, a month or more, going into April for sure at this point. And they admit that their endgame strategy is going to be different than Israel's. Now, the whole thing with Bibi out there in the air as well, the ghost of Bibi, all these videos have been AI, although the most recent one, we're waiting to see if it checks out, if it's real, or he's with all of his military cabinet members. But time and time again, every single one they've shown has been AI. And we're still waiting to see a solid one here. So we've got these warnings out there that the blowback is going to be crucial in America.
He's just hiding, that's all.
And that, dissing
like the coward he's always
allies out
been.
here in a time of war, it's not.
He's a bunker boy as well.
So I don't know what the blowback is going to be, but you can feel it. It's coming. Join me on the live stream.
So, like everything else, though, so they're going to continue to send ships into the sea to try to retake the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. And of course, there will be boots on the ground. You already know about the deployments over into Southeast Asia, and one of the bigger ships landed there near the Philippines, around that area. to get ready to go to war with Iran. You know, ground troops, etc. As this video goes into, 100,000 troops have been deployed. You already know about the 2,500 Marines. But there's more. There's a lot bigger developments happening, as we may see a ground war by at least April. We could be in the midst of the Passover once they get into the ground war operations.
A silent and massive storm is about to break out in the Middle East. The U.S. now wants to completely change the equation of the Iran crisis. The focus has shifted to the Strait of Hormuz. Next-generation amphibious warships, heavily armored elite Marines, stealth strategic bombers. They have all set sail and are approaching with unwavering determination. You'll be astonished when you learn what this unprecedented military armada will do in the region and how it will shake the balance of power. Because they didn't set out merely to deliver a diplomatic message or conduct patrols. They have also taken on the mission of unlocking the Strait of Hormuz. Iranian mine-laying ships, small boats, and missile and drone launch pads along the coastline, they are all now targets. Donald Trump called on NATO to eliminate these threats in the strait much more quickly. He stated that the alliance must assist, or they will face a grim future. However, when the requested naval support from allies went unanswered, Trump pressed the button with this historic move. This wave of destructive force, ignited by Trump, serves as a stark reminder to the crumbling regime. Any move Iran attempts will face a far greater and disproportionately destructive response from the U.S.
But here's the kicker, though, is I remember this before his assassination. Ayatollah Khamenei did state that, yes, you have all this naval ships, but it's not as good as the missiles that can sink them. So like everything else, though, this move is going to cause a lot of casualties. And I was talking about this before this war got started, that if they send all those ships, because we've seen all this movement of ships, and they get sunk, that's mass casualties, getting support for a ground war. It's looking like Trump's going to go in there fully cocked, because, his cock and balls have been hurt because of the fact that nobody answered his call to want to help. They said, fuck you, eat shit and die, motherfucker. So, he keeps raising tariffs, threatening them, and they're fucking tired of it. They don't want to fucking get involved with it. So you can't blame them for that. So now he's going to go in full throttle. Full throttle. Pretty much going to bullshit you and say that they're winning when they're actually losing. So he's going to send in more to die. As you can see, the shipbuilding, this time it's going to be a lot worse than the Lincoln retreating.
Shortly, we will explain in full detail how elite American infantry plans to seize the heart of Iran's economy without firing a single shot. But before we do that, let's delve into the very center of that massive ring of fire awaiting Iran in the Strait of Hormuz. What lies ahead for Iran in the coming days? The USS Gerald R. Ford and USS Abraham Lincoln aircraft carrier strike groups already stationed in the region were, in and of themselves, floating armies. It is claimed that the USS George Bush, as the third aircraft carrier, is in the process of being deployed. However, the decisive decisions made in the Pentagon's war rooms have elevated Operation Epic Fury to a far more strategic and results-oriented phase. On Friday, March 13, 2026, U.S. Central Command issued an additional request regarding this massive naval force. Wall Street reported that a massive amphibious task force departing from Japan had been directed on a route straight to the Middle East. At the center of this fleet is the amphibious assault ship USS Tripoli, accompanied by the warships USS New Orleans and USS San Diego. On the steel decks of these ships are 2,500 elite Marines, specially trained to land directly on shore. Known as the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, this special force has set out to carry out the world's most critical amphibious landing operations. The sole purpose of this massive fleet is to place the Strait of Hormuz, the lifeline of global oil trade, under an absolute security cordon. As we all know, the Iranian side has made highly risky moves in this strait, through which 20% of the world's oil passes. In recent weeks, the Tehran regime has carried out asymmetric attacks on civilian oil tankers sailing around the Strait of Hormuz. Since the war began on February 28th, Iran has targeted around 20 commercial ships and tankers in the region. In this way, they have disrupted the global supply chain. This wave gained momentum again, particularly between March 13th and 16th. 5 more ships, mostly massive tankers, were struck. Due to Iran's asymmetric actions, maritime traffic in the Strait of Hormuz came to a near standstill. Global oil prices then began to rise rapidly. The Tehran regime was attempting to disrupt global energy supplies using kamikaze drones and fast attack boats. However, Tehran's strategy has now reached its red line. There is no longer just an air-based force facing the regime. There are elite Marine infantry units capable of landing directly on the ground. But the U.S. Navy and Marine Corps are not the only deterrent forces for Tehran. Trump simultaneously ordered a far more strategic and extensive deployment in the skies. We have now reached the point where the air power roar of this massive blockade alert against Iran is in full swing. As part of Operation Epic Fury, the U.S. Air Force's 3 most strategic bombers took to the skies simultaneously: the B-52, B-2, and B-1. These bombers have carried out critical operations. According to open source data, there are currently between 28 and 32 massive heavy bombers in the sky, with their course directly set toward Iran. This may be the first time since World War II that such a large fleet of bombers has been seen. However, these aircraft are not merely flying around. They are on duty 24/7, seemingly to eliminate all of Iran's strategic targets. They have carried out very important operations since day one.
So, like everything else, you can see that it's amped up. And this video is coming from the U.S. side, of course, and just to make it look like they're inferior, not really being challenged, right? That, because Trump still is going to give you the illusion that he can win, and so are the other military experts. So you can see it's going to get a lot more bloodier, especially with this move. Going to get a lot more suicidal. That's what you can call it. Mandatory suicide. U.S. counterterrorism chief resigns in protest against the Iran war. D.C. has been dragged into another never-ending war by the Israeli state and its powerful American lobby, Joe Kent warned. Joe Kent, head of the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, resigned in detest over D.C.'s war with Iran, saying the Israeli state has dragged the U.S. into a never-ending conflict that does not serve American interests. And he's right about it. The least the flock, right? So, like everything else, though, that's just one of many. I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war against Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, Kent said in a resignation letter he posted on X Tuesday. He stated that it's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israeli state and its powerful American lobby. So, pretty much so, he resigns. U.S. has suffered over 3,200 casualties, staggering equipment losses in the first week of the war. So you know that the casualties are way higher. At least, press TV, when it does get resources, they're not going to lie to you. Unlike the U.S. has really downplayed the casualty numbers. Senior Iranian intelligence officials speaking exclusively to Press TV correspondent revealed detailed estimate of damage inflicted on the American terrorists in the region during the first 7 days of the ongoing war. The main finding indicates a critical depletion of air defense stockpiles for both the U.S. and Israeli regime, a development described as very serious by the official. Material losses outlined are equally significant. Intelligence further details substantial casualties, reported that at least 200 U.S. military personnel were killed, with over 3,000 wounded in the first week itself. So, like everything else, at least 3,000 wounded, 200 dead. And that's a little more accurate. I don't think that's the biggest of it yet. The official said the U.S. lost 150 missile launch platforms and 23 Patriot air defense systems. A total of 37 aircraft and helicopters were also destroyed. The report also noted that 43% of U.S. weapons stockpiles have been obliterated. So, like everything else, they are exhausting everything in just the first week. Which means that they need a ground invasion. They need to do something quick because their stockpiles are being depleted very quickly. The U.S.-Israeli war against Iran is doomed to fail. But will it take down America's crumbling empire? Well, we know what the scriptures already say, but, the fact that they are looking at this very critically. After decades of waging wars against weaker enemies, the U.S. and Israeli state may have finally confronted an immovable object, exposing the limits of their power. Somewhere along the way, we have seen the rationale for the existence of the Israeli state transition from reliance on Western guilt and being a safe haven for Zionists, after attempting destruction of Zionist communities in Europe, to the violent biblical rhetoric now being deployed across the spectrum. For murdering terrorist Prime Minister King Bibi, and even the leader of the purported opposition, Yair Lapid, to U.S. Ambassador Huckabee, and war fucketary Hegseth, replete with kafir and deshvult tattoos. We hear about Amalek, the third temple, and God's promises to the chosen people, which happen to be the real Israelites, not these Amalekites. See, they got it reversed. See, what Esau has done is called Palestinians Amalek. That's what you often hear King Bibi doing, when in fact they're the Amalekites. But nonetheless, though, this is the beginning of the downfall of an empire. And believe it or not, Alex Jones actually is going on defense of Tucker Carlson, which has a lot to do with Alex Jones turning against against Trump himself and no longer encouraging him. So this should be interesting because, like everything else, though, they are going after Tucker Carlson. Anybody that Trump, which played a couple of days ago, that Trump feels is not reporting the war the way that they want him to. So anybody critical of the war, he's going after, especially Carlson. Although this is not Alex Jones, this is still InfoWars, but Tucker Carlson, who has been critical of the war since it began, especially when he actually questioned the narrative, and it's like, look, man, if we did bomb a school, we need to publicly admit it and come clean with it. And you can't support this war, especially bombing a girls' school that killed over 150. There's no way you can support this war. So now, of course, the CIA targeting Carlson, all that, they're talking about it on InfoWars.
What are your thoughts, since you have so many contacts in intelligence agencies, what are your thoughts on the recent reports that the CIA is going after Tucker Carlson and encouraging prosecution of Tucker? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's
that's the beginning of the
Tucker
famine of the word.
has always been someone who follows the facts to the best of his ability, which is all you can ever ask of any journalist.
Right.
And that's what he's done when it comes to the Israeli law.
They're going to come after us eventually.
Ted Cruz really angry by asking some simple questions about what it is that AIPAC does. Ted Cruz didn't want to answer any of that. So it's been the same thing repeatedly. And then when you have Laura Loomer running around saying that he should be imprisoned, or worse, saying that he's engaged in treason, you're seeing this machine turn against anyone who questions that authority, that relationship with our greatest ally, whatever that means.
Now, Tucker himself, it's fair to say that he was plugged into the CIA throughout his career, correct?
I would say that's fair. I think anybody who's ever worked in media knows that at some point you're probably going to get approached by someone who works within the intelligence apparatus, and they're going to try to sway what your thinking is. They're going to try to feed you information. It's like you mentioned, I have some very good contacts within that community that I've developed trusted relationships with, but to a degree, anything that gets fed to me, you take it with a grain of salt, you let it inform your overall understanding of the world, perhaps. And there's no reason to think that at his level he wasn't dealing with that. I've had discussions with people all levels of media, and it's very common. We know Mockingbird Media was part of it, but that's not just limited to CIA. You're going to have agents from all other agencies across the world, foreign and domestic, attempting to sway narrative. Because in the end, the facts, and we're seeing this more and more every day, right, with AI video and everything that's being put out, the disinformation atmosphere that we live in, is that it doesn't matter what the facts are. What matters is what people believe, their perception of reality. So if you can alter people's perception of reality, that's more powerful than any gun on a battlefield.
So, like everything else, though, they want you to believe a certain way. And now Alex Jones and InfoWars is actually saying, look, you're not being told the truth about what's going on. Even he has turned against Donald Trump, who he once endorsed a lot. I had to stop watching him because he endorsed him so much. But now he's going on a limb here, right? But, that also means that if they are going after, those that they don't like how they report on the war, eventually they come after us, right? Because Nero himself said we must reject these prophets of doom. So it's just a matter of time that he goes full throttle after us, to get our videos off the internet and totally shut us down. Trump blasts foolish NATO on Iran, says the U.S. needs no help. Most of D.C.'s allies have rebuffed the president's call to assemble international coalition to reopen the strategic waterway. So he's going to try to take it by force. He's going to try to take the Strait of Hormuz by force by bringing in that fleet and also doing marine landings. Good luck with that. 91 million people in Iran. You think that for 1 second, if they ever ran short on soldiers, that the Iranian people themselves would not fight? Of course they would fight. You know, they would take up arms to protect their sovereignty. So it ain't just Iranian military. You're going to have a lot of civilians that'll take these terrorists out as well. U.S. President Trump lashed out Tuesday at foolish NATO over Iran, saying the U.S. no longer needs their help after allies rebuffed calls to join his efforts to attack the Strait of Hormuz. Trump said most allies rejected to push to escort ships through the crucial highway. I think NATO made a foolish mistake, he told reporters as he hosted Irish Prime Minister in the Oval Office. So, like everything else, though, you know, he's saying that they've made a big mistake. You know. Well, we'll see what he does to NATO, because again, these shall eat our flesh and burn her with fire. So we already see that in the making. Why the U.S. may be headed towards a strategic disaster, because they think that they could take it. U.S. terrorists could capture a key Iranian island, but this would lead to a whole host of new problems. While the U.S. and Israeli state choose the logic of coercive pressure against Iran, the inevitable step into more than just another Mideastern crisis. They enter one of the most dangerous knots in the world of politics. You know, so like everything else, though, they think that they're going to just go ahead and take it back, that they can have the Strait of Hormuz and chase Iran out of it. U.S. military says it hit Iran missile sites near Strait of Hormuz with 5,000-pound bunker buster bombs. So they are trying to take the Strait of Hormuz as we speak. U.S. military said Tuesday that it had hit Iranian missile sites near the strategic Strait of Hormuz with some of the most powerful bombs in the U.S. arsenal. U.S. terrorists successfully employed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles in these sites posed a risk to international shipping in the strait. I think they have a lot more than that. So, good luck. So, that's what they're bragging about. And there's more here. Why boots on the ground will be the only option left. And they're already bringing them. Because in any ground troop movement, of course you send in your special forces. Of course you send in the Marines. Of course you send in your Green Berets, your Navy SEALs. You send them in first before you start sending the bigger arsenal. You know, you send in special missions, you know. So that's what's happening. And like everything else, so the draft will be open. We've been warning about that for some time.
The United States has reached a strategic deadlock in its war with Iran. Weeks of airstrikes and precision attacks on leadership and infrastructure have failed to produce a decisive result. Even after the reported death of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, Iran's command system continues to function. Military infrastructure, especially underground, remains partially intact. The limits of air power are now becoming increasingly clear. Iran has spent years building hardened facilities, including bunkers, storage depots, and hidden launch sites. Many of them are beyond the reach of standard munitions. Even specialized bunker-busting bombs are available only in limited numbers. At the same time, the operational cost is rising. U.S. and allied stockpiles of air defense missiles are being depleted. Additional Patriot and THAAD systems are being rushed into the region. Naval forces have also adjusted their posture. Aircraft carriers such as the USS Abraham Lincoln and the USS Gerald R. Ford have moved further from the Iranian coast, reflecting the growing threat from drones and fast attack craft. Against this backdrop, preparations for a ground phase are becoming more visible. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit is already en route to the region as part of an amphibious ready group. It includes roughly 2,200 Marines supported by F-35B fighter jets, MV-22 Osprey aircraft, and attack helicopters. In parallel, the 82nd Airborne Division has been placed on high alert. The division is undergoing restructuring into more mobile brigade combat teams optimized for rapid deployment and independent operations. These units are expected to play a central role in seizing airfield supports and critical infrastructure deep behind enemy lines. Initial objectives of a ground operation would likely focus on the southern coast. Strategic locations include Bandar Abbas and nearby islands controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Capturing these sites would limit Iran's ability to disrupt maritime traffic and launch naval attacks. However, such an operation carries serious risks. Iran has adapted to modern warfare, relying on drones, mobile strike teams, and small unit tactics. Swarms of unmanned systems and fast boats could threaten both landing forces and naval assets. Even limited successes against large ships or transport aircraft would have a significant operational impact. Urban and coastal combat would further complicate the situation. Narrow terrain, fortified positions, and the presence of local militias could slow any advance. Iranian forces are likely to avoid large-scale engagements, instead focusing on attrition and constant pressure. The emerging picture is clear. Air superiority alone is not enough to win this war. Without control of territory and sustained ground presence, the United States cannot achieve its objectives. A ground invasion now appears not just possible, but increasingly inevitable.
So it's inevitable. This is not calming anytime soon. They can't just have an exit plan. They never had an exit plan. Once they started it, there was no getting out of it. Iran starts a new phase of oil war after energy production hit. Crude oil futures rose in overnight trading, with Brent nearly reaching $105 per barrel and WTI climbing as high as $98.42 per barrel, as Iran intensified drone strikes against energy infrastructure across the Gulf. So, like everything else, you can see what's happened here. Now, I think I played this before, but nonetheless, it's good to recap, because again, that's what's happening, though, is that strategic lines have been hit. And that's why they got to get it back. But this is where they'll fail. They'll send in suicide teams, and that's exactly what it is. Especially, the more and more they take out their leaders and all that, the more and more Iran's going to continue to fight back. Iran's top security official, Ali Larijani, martyred in American-Israeli attacks. In a statement late Tuesday, the Supreme National Security Council Secretariat announced the martyrdom of Ali Larijani alongside his son, Mortaza Larijani, the SNSC Deputy for Security, and a number of their bodyguards. So, like everything else, we know how they killed him, and they bombed his home. That's why King Bibi can't be seen. They have to use AI videos because it's too dangerous for him to reveal who he is or where he is, because, like everything else, anybody hosting him could also become a target because he's the #1 most wanted right now. Iran confirms the death of Ali Larijani and another key loss of leadership. Iranian state media confirms deaths of top national security chief. Issues widest evacuation order for Lebanon since the major 2006 war. So Lebanon is being hammered as well by these Amalekites, these bastards. Foreign Minister Agashi condoles the martyrdom of Ali Larijani in a terrorist act by the U.S.-Israeli state. In a message of condolence on Wednesday, Agashi expressed his utmost regret and sorrow over the martyrdom of the country's top security official, extending condolences to the leader of the Islamic Revolution, Ayatollah Saeed Majava Khamenei, Larijani family, and the Iranian nation. The foreign minister described Larijani as one of the most distinguished figures in Iranian politics, calling him a symbol of moderation, rationality, and strategic depth. He said Larijani had become rare and influential personality in the country's decision-making process, shaped by years of valuable experience in both domestic and international affairs. So, like everything else, though, King Bibi believes that taking out the leadership is going to be what leads to their victory in this war. But like everything else, though, what it's going to do is it's going to cause, it's going to cause them to not only be destroyed, which it goes into here, but pretty much their downfall, what's going to be heard in the Red Sea, is these next two verses are key verses, right? Therefore, hear the plan that he is of the Most High Yahweh, that he has devised against Edom, and hear what he has purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely they will be dragged away, the least of the flock. Surely he will make their dwelling place desolate because of them. The earth is quaked at the noise of their downfall. There is an outcry. The sound of its noise has been heard at the Red Sea. That's talking about the downfall of the empire. Because, as they are looking for a ground invasion of Iran, all these other places are going to eventually invade and take over the Israeli state. So, and like everything else, though, the U.S. is caught in the middle of a war they can't get out of. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Got one more here before I close this out. And this is from another brother who breaks down the news very well, I might add. The brother from South Carolina. Shalom. Bracha the Yahweh. Ba'ashem. Yahweh Shai. Ba'ashem Rakakadash. Wa Abba Babal. Brakatam. Jehovah elect. Shalom.
Giving all praises to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai Bahasham, Rachachakarash. Double honors to the apostles, the bishops, and the elders at Great Millstone who rule well. Peace and salutations, as always, to the elect. In the news, going into a few things that are happening, as the scriptures say, speak thou into the ears of my people the words of prophecy. Okay? And the word prophecy means to say before. As a matter of fact, let's lead with that scripture. Okay, as you still got naysayers and people crying about their emotions of the matter. Well, the Heavenly Father don't give a damn about your emotions. And we're at the end of this man's world. Okay, and somebody has the full truth, as the prophets in the latter days will be set up. As a matter of fact, let's get that as well. The book of Sirach, chapter 36. Okay, Sirach chapter 36. Because we ain't got time for your emotions, man. We trying to get the kingdom, man. Okay, as you can see, our enemy, who you should have your eyes on, okay, is getting ready to do something big and drastic. Not only to take the focus and attention off of him, which is not going to work, but to take away all of your civil liberties, rights. Okay, destroy the banking system. Collapse the economy as we know it, and ultimately push for civil unrest so that he can implement his order out of chaos is what we're seeing, and we're getting ready to see it on a whole nother level. This is the book of Sirach, chapter 36 and 14. It says, "Fill Sion with thine unspeakable oracles, and thy people with thy glory." Okay, and an oracle is a prophecy, right? A divine saying, and this is how our people have communion, with the Heavenly Father through Yahweh Shai sacrifice, through the Holy Spirit. The prophets are set up to give you a message from the heavens, man. See, and this is how our people will be filled with the glory. It says, "Give testimony unto those that thou hast possessed from the beginning, and raise up prophets that have been in thy name." So the Lord has given testimony unto the elect, and they have the truth, okay? The testimony, which is ultimately going to lead to the end of this man's world, as the two witnesses, the elect of Judah and Ephraim, have been raised up here in these latter days. Okay, game time is up, man. Riding the fence, trying to be cute, playing, all of that is up. We're literally here. Okay? So the Lord has given testimony unto those that he has possessed from the beginning, and raised up prophets that have been in thy name. And the word prophet, pro, before, phasai, to speak, to say something before it happens. And that's a form of spiritual power. It says, "Reward them that wait for thee, and let thy prophets be found faithful." See that? So the prophets of the Lord are faithful right now. All right, all of you individuals who are just talking and complaining and crying and whining and trying to figure out a way to make Esau comfortable. Y'all are through, man. Okay, let's get the book of 2nd Esdras, the 15th chapter. Okay, we'll get into a few things that I have through the Spirit. This is the book of Sirach. 2nd Esdras, chapter 15 and 1. It says, "Behold, speak thou in the ears of my people the words of prophecy," the things that were foretold to happen. We're pushing those things, "which I will put in thy mouth, saith the Lord, and cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. Fear not the imaginations against the end," as the book of Habakkuk says, right? It says that the things that, the visions he wrote and the various other prophets wrote, they made it plain as possible so that here in these latter days, the elect men of the Lord, all right, will get the message and run, okay, to the highways and the byways and to these various platforms and tell the truth of the matter. So all of the visions that are written in the Holy Scriptures should be expounded on by the men of the Lord in these times so that you can make sense of this mess that we are witnessing. All right, here's a good point. Fear not the imaginations against thee. Let not the incredulity, all right, which is the inability to believe or have faith. Let not the incredulity of them trouble thee that speak against thee. So, even your particular family members, you're going to start to notice some of them are going to start to hit you up, all right? And, certain gainsayers are going to be convinced, but in the grand scheme of things, the majority of the world is getting ready to be hypnotized to be against us. They already are, but as this
None of my family members believe my witness.
Okay, he's going to, through enchantment, try to manipulate the minds to switch to people like us, okay, with our belief, with our faith, all right, and being the problem of the world. And he's going to use that as a means to justify digital IDs, surveillance on another level, and the micro C-hip, which is the mark of the beast. That's the end game to this plan, okay? And you should see it clearly through the chaos that they're, purposely orchestrating throughout the four corners of the earth, all right? This war is leading to the destruction of economies. And just know that Esau Edom has a method to his madness, okay? Now, if you've been watching the news and prophecies, one of the things that I and we have told you is that as Esau, continuously gets exposed, he's going to use his media and enchantments to do what he always does, okay? And, point the finger at another boogeyman, all right, domestic terror and everything else that we've told you. I mean, through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shah. Again, it's not of us. The glory goes to the Most High through Yahweh Shai, that we even have the ability to tap into these things, okay? And that was a heavy price paid through Yahweh Shai's sacrifice that has, now enabled us to, have the access to go into these scriptures. The seals were loose through that sacrifice. So here in these latter times, we have, the scoop, the inside scoop through prophecy, man. And we don't take that lightly, okay? We're going to start here and go through a series of a few videos and articles and just get through them, just to keep you up to date with what's happening. I'm pretty sure you brothers and sisters are being updated because all of the men of the Lord are just on fire and going in, starting with the apostles, the bishops, and the elders, okay? This is from Dabu 7. Be ready. Iran activates sleeper cells, warns to stay one, all right, I believe, kilometer away from U.S. and Israeli banks. All right, now, again, we've looked this up before, but let's just look up what is a sleeper cell. Okay, it says a secretive group of spies or terrorist agents that remain inactive within the
Just surprised they're not saying Al-Qaeda, but they're going to say Iran this time.
We see with the Biden administration, you have the talking point of all manner of illegal immigrants.
Al-Qaeda was usually the boogeyman that they used, or ISIS, if you will.
It's just a big mess. As the scriptures talks about all of the mingled people that would be in the midst of Babylon the Great. All right, let's. I believe that's in the book of let's see here. Yep, Jeremiah 50 and 37. It says, "A sword is upon their horses, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her." So this is a melting pot. They shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures, and she shall be robbed. So things are getting ready to happen as the Lord is, finishing this thing off for us, man. The days are being shortened. All right, these, months are going by like weeks. Weeks are going by like days. Okay, it's getting ready to be Friday again tomorrow. Okay, and through the Spirit, all of this fulfills biblical prophecy, man. So let's play some of this video and get some articles, because this man is at the end of the road. He's tacky as all get out, and he has no other play. This is his only play. And when you look at comment boards, everybody's figured him out. Okay, next is going to be the anti-SAM card. Okay, as a means to justify controlling the narrative and shutting people up, because this man is being exposed. Again, as we showed you that clip from the Wizard of Oz, the wizard behind the curtain has been exposed. And now his act is to don't pay any attention to the man behind the curtain. And he's going to do it through fear tactics, mind
pay no
tactics,
attention to these prophets that do, like he said in the first
he's a witch. See, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which the serpent wasn't no snake, wiggling around with an apple. Okay? When you go into the root word of the Hebrew word for serpent, It's Nakash, and it means a diviner, an enchanter, one who practices enchanting or magic spells, witchcraft. Show me an animal that does witchcraft. All right, now there's particular ways that a serpent can be, linked to evil, and there's particular ways a serpent can be linked to righteousness, but the Bible is symbolizing things. All right, and that spirit from the serpent, okay, is in this devil here. That's why the scriptures say that old serpent called the devil and Satan, they represent the evil. Okay, this is why you're hearing about the Epstein files. The Catholic Church has a history of just absolute terror and evil. Nothing but evil is tied to these people, yet they're able to use their media to paint everybody else as a boogeyman. Okay, these people are crazy. Pizzagate, these devils are something else. But anyway, I'll chill on the rant. Be ready, Iran, activate sleeper cells.
Alright guys, this is pretty much a red alert for anyone that has money in the bank, your 401ks, all that. I already put out one warning, because Jamie Dimon and the government come out and warn that the banks could get hit here any moment. Now, we have confirmation that Iranian sleeper cells have been activated. They're openly threatening to eliminate Trump, and they are openly putting out a warning that everyone should stay away, at least 1 kilometer away from U.S. and Israeli banks. They also add in their financial centers. They are openly about to target and hit financial centers. Why? Because the U.S. is targeting banks. They hit their infrastructure, their water, their communications, their banking, everything. And if you don't know, Iran is highly sophisticated in terms of their hacking ability. Why this hasn't been taken on head on? Well, it's the mechanism to fight back, and the world is a stage. I don't trust none of this.
Yeah, and you shouldn't. All right, however, these devils will use left-handed means. All right, you remember the 9 to the 1 to the 1. All right, they will use left-hand means to actually harm people and blame it on somebody else. Okay? And again, they're not going to let these things go to waste. Okay? Because again, he has but a short time. All right, we have to read that in the book of Revelation, the 12th chapter. Let's get this first, 2 Timothy 3:1. So not only do they have sleeper cells over there in the east, all right, which are causing these Arab countries where America has allied with, hell, right? But over here in the west, as we'll show you, okay, the FBI warns that Iran aspired to attack California with drones in retaliation for war. Okay? And may Yahweh Bahashim Yahushai cover us. Because again, we are going to be delivered out of all of this trouble. Okay? Because eventually, as we know in the book of Jeremiah, the 30th chapter, Jacob trouble, all right, is going to uptick, where he's going to blame you for everything. He's going to blame us for everything. Okay, so you don't have to be rooted. 2 Timothy 3:1. This know also that in the last days perilous times shall come. We always show you that word perilous means hard to approach, hard to endure. Okay, and just like Yahweh Shah, there was a point where he knew he was getting ready to have to go through with that sacrifice, and he asked the Lord, "Is there another way?" Okay, and in the flesh, who wants to go through all of this madness? But we know that this is the only way out, so we are at peace with it. We embrace it, as the 3 holy children, in the story of the 3 holy children, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the Babylonian Empire. They walked into the fire, the furnace, for denying the bow to Nebuchadnezzar's image. They walked into that furnace praising the Lord, and Yahweh Shai showed up in that chapter. He showed up. The Son of the Most High showed up, and they were not burned by the fire. Do you believe that? Okay, it's going to take a very, very high level belief. All right, and the beauty is that it's not of us. The Lord is going to put it in you to believe and have faith on that level, that's what's going to overcome this devil. The blood of Yahweh Shai, the testimony that we have, all right, and through faith, loving not these lives unto death. So you can't threaten the elect with death and we change our tune. The elect understand that death is not the end all be all. So as we enter into these times, this man is going to use, like what people call fear porn. Okay, that's what he's trying to do. However, we know this man will actually do these things. Okay, so these are the perilous times that we are living in. Okay, and we ain't making it up. The scripture said it. Through the terror of the Lord we persuade men. Revelation 12:12. Therefore rejoice ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time.
And that's why he said in his first term that we must reject these prophets of doom, knowing that his time is just about up. Hopefully this has all been edifying. You can catch his brother's video. He has many channels to back up. I catch it on the Remnant Save channel. Let's see, what was it called? Remnant say 144BA, but he's got a lot of them. You know, so pretty much though, you know, you can catch it there. So hopefully this has all been edifying. Shalom, Barak Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakadash, Wa Abba Babal. Brakathum, Jehovah Elect. Shalom.